All right. Welcome, everyone, to a deep dive on Apocalypse Now.
Ah, this will be good.
It's a film, I think, that
It's definitely a film.
a film that needs a little unpacking.
Right.
I mean, we're talking themes, we're talking the connection to Heart of Darkness, and I saw from your notes before we got started that you are really interested in how this reflects the era it was made in.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So we've got excerpts about the plot, the characters, the impact it had, plus some background on Vietnam War films, just to give us that context.
Perfect.
Ready to journey upriver.
Let's do it.
All right. Now this film, it's described as loosely based on Conrad's novella Heart of Darkness.
Right.
And some folks might be thinking, what does that even mean? Or how much did Apocalypse Now actually borrow from, like, the source material?
Well, it's not a scene for scene remake, right? It's more like they took the core, the essence, like
Yeah.
those themes of darkness, obsession, the collapse of civilization, all that good stuff from Conrad. And they basically transplanted it right into the heart of the Vietnam War.
Mm.
So you've got Captain Willard, who's kind of our Marlowe stand-in.
Okay.
And he's on this journey, but it's not just a physical journey, it's psychological too.
Right, right.
And then you have Colonel Kurtz. He's like, he's like the Mr. Kurtz of this story.
Right.
This enigmatic figure who embodies that descent into madness.
Yeah, and speaking of madness, let's talk about that setting, the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
I know you're interested in how filmmakers in the late 70s were, like, tackling this subject.
Yeah.
Was it a common theme at the time?
Oh, totally. I mean, the late 70s saw a huge wave of films trying to grapple with Vietnam, the trauma, the aftermath. But Apocalypse Now, it stands out.
Yeah. Why is that?
It's got this surreal, almost philosophical quality to it.
All right.
Films like The Deer Hunter, they really focused on the soldier's experience, the personal impact.
Right.
But Apocalypse Now, it uses the war more as a jumping off point
Nice.
to explore something deeper, something darker, I guess you could say.
So it's not just a war film, it's a
It's like a fever dream
fever dream.
about what happens to us, to humanity, when we're pushed to the absolute limit.
Less about the battles, more about the internal battleground.
Exactly.
Okay, let's talk about Colonel Kurtz.
Ah, Kurtz.
This this is a guy who's gone rogue, right?
Completely.
Assemble his own following. He seems to fascinate people. Why? What is it about this character that's so compelling?
I think it's because he embodies those questions we all wrestle with
Mm.
about good and evil, the nature of power, the seductive pull of the dark side. He
Yeah.
rejects everything, traditional authority, morality even.
Hmm.
He embraces the primal. And by doing that, he forces us to look at that potential for savagery within ourselves. He's like a dark mirror to Willard,
Yeah.
reflecting back all the darkness Willard encounters on his journey.
And that journey, man, it is filled with some seriously surreal and disturbing stuff. Is there a moment, a scene, anything that really sticks with you? Something that captures that unique, that stylistic, uh,
The helicopter attack
yeah.
set to Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries. I mean,
Right.
it's just this incredible juxtaposition. Beauty and violence. You've got high art mixed with just utter chaos.
Hmm.
It's like a visual representation of the madness that's consuming everything.
Powerful stuff.
A true spectacle of destruction.
Definitely not your typical war movie moment.
Not at all.
Now, I noticed we have some excerpts here about supporting characters.
Yes.
And I'm curious because, I mean, obviously Willard and Kurtz they're huge, but beyond them, are there any supporting characters that you think really make this film work?
Oh, absolutely.
Who comes to mind?
You've got Chef, for example. This gentle soul who's just totally out of his element.
Yeah.
And then Lance, lost in this haze of drugs and disillusionment.
Right, right.
They each show us different ways people cope with the absurdity of war. They represent different facets of humanity, stripped bare by the conflict.
Right.
And they add so much depth and texture to the film.
Yeah, it's amazing how these smaller roles can have such a big impact.
Absolutely.
Speaking of impact, I've got to ask about the ending. Willard's confrontation with Kurtz.
It's something else, isn't it?
Without giving anything away, what makes this ending so powerful, so open to interpretation?
It's ambiguous. It's a masterpiece of ambiguity.
Oh.
It doesn't give you easy answers. It doesn't tell you who's right, who's wrong, who wins.
Mhm.
It leaves you grappling with those big questions, good and evil, the psychological toll of war,
Right.
whether anyone can truly win in that kind of conflict. It makes you confront everything you've witnessed, the darkness, the
This
madness.
is not just an ending. It's
It's a
a
beginning,
beginning. Oh, wow.
a starting point for your own reflections, your own conclusions.
Okay, now I read somewhere that the production of this film,
Oh, it's a nightmare.
a nightmare. Does knowing that add another layer to the film?
Absolutely.
So.
I mean, you think about it, typhoons, destroying sets, drug use on location, the sheer length of the shoot.
Wow.
It's almost like a reflection of the descent into chaos that the film itself depicts.
Yeah.
It blurs the line between art and reality
It's like life imitating art.
in the most intense way possible.
Wow. So Apocalypse Now, it's more than just a film.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
an experience. It's a conversation starter. And it's definitely a reflection of the times it was made in.
for sure.
So I've got one last thought for you, for everyone listening. Could a film like this be made today?
Mm.
And if it were, how would it be different, reflecting our world, our anxieties, our conflicts? Something to ponder as you continue to explore Apocalypse Now. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
I'm so glad we could do this.
Absolutely. Anytime.
All right, take care.
You too.